designing for different needs. In addition to the specific focus that persona can give a design effort, some consistent and generalizable patterns of user needs should inform how our products are designed. In this chapter, we'll explore some strategies for serving these well-known needs: learnability and help, customizability, localization, and globalization and accessibility. So in addition to the persona that we have discussed in the previous video, these are the immediate and additional techniques we could use to help us design for different persona, such as primary, secondary, etc. So these are the techniques or tools that will help us support those different persona for beginners, intermediate, and experts. Learnability. Two concepts are particularly useful in sorting out the needs of users with different levels of experience trying to learn an interface: command modalities and working sets. The fallback option, should this proven insufficient, is online help in its various forms. So the two most useful in catering for that different persona we have discussed in the previous video are command modalities and working sets. So the fallback option, if it's insufficient, is an online help, the frequently asked question. So this frequently asked question is actually the last help. It's not the common help. Command modalities. User interfaces are, in a reductionist sense, a means for users to enter data and issue commands to the computer. So in its simplest form, the user interface is a way for a user to enter data and enter commands to the computer, kind of like a software, right? But as we have discussed, we or the software developer are designing this front-end interface to avoid it being like the back-end or implementation model. Data entry is generally fairly straightforward, dictating to a speech recognition algorithm, typing into an empty page or text field, using a finger or stylus to draw, clicking and dragging objects, or picking a value from a menu or similar widget. So these are the common data input: speech recognition algorithm that detects your speech, typing into a text field, or using a finger on a touch screen, or clicking and dragging objects, picking a value from a menu or similar widget. So that's clicking objects as well. Commands that activate functions are a bit more difficult to learn, since users need to figure out both what commands are available and how they are to be used. So commands that activate paragraphs or books, like this, it's actually like multiple commands in the back end, right, are a bit more difficult to learn. So we need some techniques or approach, organized way to help our user learn it. Command modalities are the distinct techniques for allowing users to issue these instructions to the application. Direct manipulation handles, drop down and pop-up menu items, toolbar controls, and keyboard accelerators are all examples of command modalities. So the controls and dialog boxes and the keyboard accelerators that we have discussed in the previous video with desktop are all command modalities. Considerate user interfaces often provide multiple command modalities for critical functions. Menu items, toolbar items, keyboard accelerators, gestures, or direct manipulation controls, each with parallel capability to invoke a single particular command. So a considerate interface, what we have discussed last video, is provide different ways to cater to different customers. So that includes intermediate, um, expert, and beginner. So we need to provide these different types of commands such as keyboard shortcut, gestures, direct manipulation controls, menu, toolbar items to invoke that single function. Mobile apps have less capacity for multiple modalities, but the trade-off that there is usually fewer interface elements to search when looking for a particular function. So there is few interface elements or functions in mobile app, so it's easier to learn, unlike with desktop application or web application. So that's the key thing to understand. It also there's less input because and also the idioms as well are designed to make it easier for you in mobile app. So yeah, it's kind of like it balance itself. Uh, Pedagogic, immediate, and invisible commands. So here are the things that will help us make our application learnable. Some command modalities offer new users more support. Dialog boxes and command menus, such as those found on traditional desktop applications menu bar as shown in figure 16.1, teach the user with descriptive text. So this is good for beginners. This is why commands presented in this manner express a pedagogic modality, commands that teach their behavior using inspection. Intermediates often want to leave menus behind to find more immediate and efficient tools in the form of immediate and invisible commands such as keyboard shortcuts. So here, menus on Windows version of Adobe Reader gives user a textual overview of the application's functionality. It call out keyboard mnemonics and accelerators and offer toolbar icons. So there's a textual overview, save as, create PDF in menu. And it has mnemonics for that, CTRL plus W. And accelerators as well, and offer toolbar icons. There's also toolbar icons in this. Unfortunately, this pedagogic idiom is seldom available in mobile apps due to space constraints. Direct manipulation controls like drag handles, real-time manipulation controls like sliders and knobs. So for these sliders and knobs, they're actually real-time, called real-time manipulation controls. And for drag handles, they are direct manipulation controls. And even push buttons and their toolbar variants are command that express an immediate modality. So this direct manipulation, because we just need to click the object and then it will immediately change the or invoke the function or change the data, either way, right? As we have discussed in the previous videos, these sliders and knobs are for bounded data input And also, these control like objects invoke selection and imperative controls, which could be a combination of noun and verb, or could be a paragraph itself, or it could be a book, and even push buttons and their toolbar variants. So the toolbar here at the top or the bottom are commands that express immediate invocation of function. So that's what we call immediate modality controls, have an immediate effect on data or its presentation without any intermediary. So that's the immediate here. Menus and dialogue, on the other hand, requires an intermediate step, sometimes more than one. So once you click these icons in the toolbar, it immediately applies, such as this bullet point, etc. But for menu, you need to sometimes you need to step more than one, but usually you need to click more than one, because once you click the menu, you need to choose the option on menus. So those are the available commands to make with our applications using this GUI. Keyboard accelerators and gestures take the idea of immediacy one step further. There is no locus of these commands in the visual interface, only invisible keystrokes, swipes, pinches, or flicks of the finger. These types are called invisible modality. So these keyboard accelerators, like invisible swipes or pinches or flicks of a finger, it could be also something in the keyboard. So invisible commands are used extensively by intermediates and even more by experts, because it just rely on our instinct, on our eye movement. Some of it are widely used conventions, such as flicking or up or down to scroll on a touchscreen interface. Information in the world versus information in the head. Pedagogic commands are designed to be learnable via information in the world, because once you click that, there is a text, it's more detailed. However, it becomes distraction over time. Invisible commands require the user to have memorized information about the functions and their keyboard equivalents. Immediate commands fall somewhere in between. So invisible commands, the reason it requires the user to memorize is because it's different for different applications, such as Control S, Control any other control that sends signals with a different combination of keyboards are invisible command that's specific to that application. For immediate commands, those are in the icon or sliders or buttons, or those are the things that we can see visually, so that falls in between of invisible and information in the world. So these keyboard controls like Alt, Control A, Control S, Control C, Control V, we cannot really see that, right? So intermediate users rely on those, especially experts. Memorization vectors. As people become intermediates, the slow, repetitive verbosity of menu start to seem tedious. Suddenly, he will notice mnemonics visual hints and wonder about their meaning. We must also provide a path by which the user can learn the immediate command corresponding to each item in menu, called memorization vector. So a path for the user. So this path could be different ways to learn this immediate command corresponding to that menu, because menu is the more detailed, while the immediate command are like icon are the more visually command. So the path for us that we provide to user to learn that are memorization vector. The least effective in providing memorization vector is in user documentation and app's main online help system, because it put the onus of finding the vector on users and leave it up to users to realize that they need to find it in the first place. So first, the user must uh, realize that they need to find that. So they may not be aware that those um, commands exist, immediate command exist. At the same time, it puts the cognitive load to the user, because the user needs to find it instead of putting it visually on the screen. The most effective by which the way used by most desktop applications are mnemonics and accelerators, because they integrate directly into the main interface. In Word, the mnemonics for commonly used functions save is Alt F and then S. Alt F navigates to the file menu, so here, and then S issues the save command. So that's actually mnemonics. Let's see. Alt F, and then when we there's like tooltip that will pop up when you hit that Alt and F. The mnemonics are shown when Alt key is pressed and shown with underline or modal tooltips. So that little box that we've saw is actually a modal dialog box. The user could press Alt again to hide the tooltips. The accelerator for save is Control plus S, and for other up. It is noted explicitly besides the menu item. More recently, this mnemonics has been accommodated by icons in its artifact to more ingrain its meaning. So the accelerator is kind of like you don't need to notice something in the screen visually, because it automatically does or sends signal to the application, like Control S for saving. So it is noted explicitly besides the menu item. So actually the one that we see here is actually accelerator. It's not mnemonics. So more recently, this mnemonics has been accommodated by icons in its artifacts to more ingrain its meaning. So this mnemonics actually aside from mnemonics, we also use icon to remember the functions or commands, such as for printing, and also that mnemonics has been associated for those type of functions, such as 1 for this type of icon, 2 for that, and then F for file, etc. So Office suite application use small pop-up boxes to display mnemonics when Alt is pressed, and tooltips to display keyboard accelerator. So a small pop-up boxes is for mnemonics, and the tooltips is for the keyboard accelerator. So that's the difference, since the standard menus has been replaced by the toolbar ribbon UI. So these are the ribbon UI like we've discussed in the previous video. So these are the two most effective paths for us to provide this immediate commands. So invisible command is the accelerators. Mobile OS or mobile phones do not have these accelerators and mnemonics, because there aren't any real estate to place these signals to the closest to this. The closest to this are the welcome tours, but that's about it. So the welcome stores that we've discussed in the previous video, we were gonna discuss this again here. For mobile apps, so that's the um, memorization vectors for those immediate commands for to accommodate different users for this information in the world and information in the head, to be more considerate with our intermediate users. So working sets, because we all learn by repetition, people will memorize a minimal working set, which are a set of commands that overlaps memorized by individual based on their use patterns. So there is this minimal set of functions or commands, or immediate minimal set of immediate commands, invisible commands, and menu item that the most common users use based on your persona. So that is called minimal working set, though the variation to each individual are called working set. In Excel, for example, almost every user will enter formulas, specify fonts and labels, and print pages. So those are the minimal working set. But Sally's working set might include drawing graphs, whereas Elliot's working set might include linking spreadsheets. The minimal working set are best acquired through usage analytics of goal-directed design methods scenarios. So you need to use analytics, just like what we've discussed in the considerate. So it should be part of the goal-directed reiteration, goal-directed design research. Designers should, at the very least, use immediate modality for all commands in the minimal working set of the application primary users. So we need to use the immediate. We need to at least provide the immediate for that working set, because users want those commands to be especially quick and easy to invoke. And for expert, it's especially essential to have the accelerators for that. The key attributes that will determine each individual working sets are their preference and job requirements. So depending on individuals, whether it's their intermediate, beginner, or expert, and their lifestyle choices, their age or lifestyle changes, and then job requirements or skills requirements determine how they will determine their working set, the variation of on their working sets. So remember, the minimal working set is the minimum functions. So these working sets, or the individual working sets, will actually be determined by their individualities, such as job requirements, life stages, etc. Even custom software provided to corporations today allow the flexibility to switch any individual preference command to immediate modality. So we must provide it as well to accommodate all kinds of users. So even the especially the with the advent of AI today, the software as a service allows this flexibility, because Microsoft actually allows their apps to be configured depending on individual enterprise or even individual preference to immediate modality, so they can configure that themselves. So we must provide it as well to accommodate all kinds of users. Similarly, any command with immediate modality also require duplicate pedagogic versions to enable beginners to learn the interface. So any commands with immediate, so anything that is has an icon should have a pedagogic commands. Otherwise, it won't be used in the front end. So this implies that most functions in the interface should have multiple command modalities. So at the very least, immediate and the next menu. So those immediate and menu, and the accelerators are for experts. So the first is immediate and then the menu. This is an exception. Sorry, the first is menu, of course, and then the immediate. There is an exception to the rule of multiple command modalities. Dangerous commands such as erase all, clear, and abandon changes should not have accidentally activated or easy immediate modality commands associated with them. So there shouldn't be an accelerator for this irreversible or layout changing actions. Instead, they need to be protected within menus and dialog boxes. So they should be in dialog boxes. If you really need to protect that, you could provide multiple dialog boxes for high cognitive load. So that's how actually you create more secure applications, or if you're working on a secure app, you need to provide this menu instead of this icon base. So it takes time to learn, but you're just tailoring that for a few individuals anyway. So whether the situation is the first use of an app or specific to the use of an individual control or feature, a number of pattern support help in context or help users accomplish involved tasks more easily. So whether it is the first time use of an app, such as providing those basic functions, because of course if your app is complex, it will take time for the user to understand it. So they might understand few basic functions first, and then after that they could dig deep on that individual control or feature. Whether those two you're targeting help for those two, a number of patterns support help in context or help users accomplish involved tasks more easily. So there's a lot of patterns that we can use to help the users. So we have discussed this in the previous videos or already, but we're gonna discuss this again. Guided tours. Guided tours and overlays are patterns that have become popular on mobile platforms because they provide reasonable solutions to the problem of initial learnability. So for initial learnability, especially for mobile apps, but it's rarely used for desktop. I mean, sometimes it is used, but yeah. Since mobile apps must rely more on immediate and invisible command modalities, because there's usually insufficient screen real estate for pedagogic command modalities. So the mobile apps are particulars with actually immediate only and accelerators, because there's no room for dialog modal box. These patterns, while more optimized for mobile, have seen increasing use in desktop apps as well, because it provided a brief overview of most important functions and interface behaviors. So it allows the user to understand the behavior of that interface he wants to add data and control. So then again, this designing for different needs is just another way of saying of providing visibility for the functions that we have created in the back end. This is the way to structure actually our app, so that we could I mean, this is the available tools, and then the that will allow us to serve the most users mental model. So guided tours and overlays are patterns that have become popular on mobile platforms because they provide reasonable solutions to the problem of initial learnability. Since mobile apps must rely more on immediate and invisible command modalities because of the real estate, these patterns, while more optimized for mobile, have seen increasing use in desktop apps as well. So the other way to do this are to take the users through a typical sequential process such as creating, editing, and sharing a document using the app. So the common way to do this is through a sequential cards like we've discussed in the previous video. The last part or the other type is by actually taking the user through the functions or command and then let them create, edit, share a document, delete it, etc. So let them practice it. So that's the two most common manipulation. The two most common manipulation for this are tapping and swiping. So we just use this, minimal actions to move into this. So tours have a structure somewhat similar to a wizard. The major difference is that instead of asking user input to configure something in the app, the sequence of cards, screens, or dialogue exists purely to demonstrate product function and behavior. So it doesn't ask questions, it's just for demonstration. Actually, in a way, it's providing choice as well because you can exit it by tapping anything in the screen. But this card is actually just a modal box like this. So OS X has an interesting variant of this in the settings for mouse and trackpad gesture configuration. Rather than showing a sequence of mostly static cards, the UI demonstrates the gesture being configured using short, repeating video clips of hands performing the gestures. So there's repeated video clips when inside this mobile that shows you how to actually use that icon or command or the immediate or invisible command like swiping or scrolling up and down, etc. Guided tours usually launch automatically the first time an app is run, and sometimes when a new version of an app is released with significant new features. So if it's significant new features, these guided tours are also being implemented. The final screen of the tour should include a way to manually relaunch the tour. Generally speaking, tours shouldn't go on for more than 5 to 7 screens at most, otherwise the user will forget it. So 53's Inks iOS app, Paper uses a guided tour to explain its main features and interactions. The user swipes through a set of illustrated cards, each of which describes a different pair of features or interactions. When the app is opened for the first time, the welcome tour is available from an About menu access by tapping the company logo. Overlays. Overlays are best suited to relatively simple apps whose functions are not pedagogically evident. So these are for complex app. The guided tours, as you have a lot of more function like this 7 or 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. Yeah, there's 7 1 2 3 6 or 7 slides because it's more complex, while here for simple but subtle as well, because if it's not subtle or it can easily be found, you don't need this help, right? Another thing with this is there is a progress bar like we've discussed in the previous video. Overlays are best suited to relatively simple apps whose functions are not pedagogically evident, as the name implies. So for example, in the menu of these apps or like in the icons or command, it is not evident because it's a new app, so you're creating a new idiom, etc. It's like a transparent sheet laid over the interface on which arrows and descriptive text that provide brief description of their usage are embedded. So here, so you can tap anywhere to cancel, tap anywhere here to apply. So tap, you just need to tap anywhere there to dismiss. So like guided tours, overlays typically are launched when an app is first run or when it is updated with a major new release version. An overlay should include a means to relaunch it somewhere in the app, often in a settings menu or pedagogic items, or via tiny help icon placed in an unobtrusive corner of the screen. So the tiny help won't be noticed of the by the immediate or beginners. It will be found sooner or later by immediate or expert users, like what we've discussed in the previous video. So Zite, shown in figure 16.5, is a newsreader app that combines the sequential guided tour concept with the idea of an overlay. If it walks the user through a series of full screen overlays as accessed by swiping. It ends with a large done button in the center of the screen. So this actually is more innovative. It combines the overlay and guided tour somewhat. So it walks the user through a series of full screen overlays accessed by swipe. So it's actually full screen instead of just a modal dialog box. It ends with a large done button in the center of the screen. So you know it's done. So here edge, and there's a progress bar as well. Again, these are just as any organization technique that we are discussing here. It could be used, in combination rather than making it as a standard on each application, because each application are different. So this approach is useful in that each feature discussed can be shown in the spatial context of a full screen, potentially making it a bit easier for users to orient themselves. So this approach is useful in that each feature discussed can be shown in the spatial context of a full screen. So it's bigger in text, kind of like a transient app, potentially making it a bit easier for user to orient themselves, because the text could be larger, the icon could be larger, and the done icon at the end is large. Galleries and templates, because many are not capable of building nicely formatted documents from scratch, and many apps only provide hammers, saws, and chisels. Other apps, however, provide finished table and chair that they can sand and paint, like OmniGraffle on the Mac, which lets you create diagrams, flowcharts, and user interface mockups from already built document. So this is called templates. So this is how we saw blank states. That is the concept we've discussed in the previous video that intimidate most people. So remember, one of the things of being smart and considerate application is that making a reasonable guess that will be right 80% of the time, because it provides instead of asking those multiple questions, just provide those the most reasonable one, because it will not show that you are ignorant, right? So this is like the application of that, or the implementation. So here there is a different shapes. OmniGraffle are in different templates. OmniGraffle Pro offers galleries of templates at both the document level and the level of line and shape styles. So OmniGraffle has this templates for document level, or this template level for a full document, uh, or in the big picture, as well as on the details such as line and shape styles. Undoubtedly, users will want to create their diagrams from scratch, but most would jump at the chance to start with some stylistic choice made for them in the form of layout templates. So obviously you want an analytics here, um, for you to know what the most useful to your customers. Similarly, some users may want to draw their own shapes for things such as arrows and stars. So since you know that, therefore you need to provide that command, or that functionality for drawing their own shapes such as arrows and stars. But most people would be happy to select from a gallery of predefined shapes. OmniGraffles calls them stencils instead of templates. So design principle offer user gallery of ready-to-use templates. Input and content area hints. A subtle form of contextual help is a small and often grayed block back text that provide brief description of where to tap on the screen. This subtle text usually lives below text input field, which has a small point or font size before the field gets input focus. So there is a small point or font size before the field that describes it before it gets in focus, especially for touch screen. So that is called content area hints. So it provides hints that you can click that icon or immediate command. So this subtle text usually lives below text and input field, right? Once the field gets a cursor in it, the input hint text is cleared. So it's like a little model hint, and the field is ready for input. An expansion of this idea has become popular in apps that have larger or central content area that is initially empty. Rather than sit there empty without lifting a finger to help the user figure out how to get started, clever apps use this empty space to provide a more verbose description of what to do. So this is another application of solving the blank states problem. Or they can also provide a one-time configuration control as part of the content area hint, as shown in figure 16.7. So here, Camera is an iOS photo app that use the otherwise empty photo content area at initial launch to provide some verbose hinting and configuration controls. So you can add photos by tapping this camera or plus. So here for immediate camera, here plus, maybe you could configure the photos by editing it. Pros and cons of wizards. So if wizards are usually are used for the start at the start of your configuration of a laptop or a mobile phone. It asks you for the one-time configuration that you would probably be asked, such as English, the time, the Wi-Fi, etc., and the Apple ID. So a wizard attempts to guarantee success in using a feature by stepping users through a series of steps. This is the user through a complex process, typically for configuring a feature of the application, operating system, or data or connected hardware device, or data level system. Each of the wizard's dialog asks users a question or two in sequence, and in the end, application performs whatever configuration task was requested. So the command will be applied, of course, in the backend. One of the problem is this sort of wizards rapidly devolve into exercise in confirmation messaging. So in the previous video, we discussed how this confirm message is just lack of confidence of probability and possibility. So it doesn't differentiate that probability and possibility. The user learns that he merely needs to click the next button on each screen. So that's another problem. It becomes habitual without critically analyzing why. So if everything is important, you don't know what the critical incident is, right? So another is if a user who doesn't know what an IP address is in a normal dialogue will be equally mystified by it in a wizard. So if the user could not do not have experience of entering an IP address in a modal dialogue, it will be mystified. I mean, if the user are being asked for the IP in the modal dialogue, it will be surprised if it was asked in wizards. Wizards are appropriate in few cases. One is during the initial configuration of a hardware device, like a one-time, could be a network driver or speaker, etc., where registration, activation, or other handshaking between devices and services is required. So I think OS mostly automate this today. iPhones and iPads start with a short wizard to select a language and activate various services before releasing the user to the home screen. Similarly, Sonos smart speakers use a wizard to identify a new device added to a whole home audio network, which requires the controller to detect a button press. So if you have this integrated, then it may be needed, because once you set, it's kind of like a set and forget. A second appropriate use of the wizard format is for online survey interfaces. Since surveys are a set of questions, a wizard can appropriately break a survey into unintimidating chunks while providing encouragement using a progress bar, like the one we got in welcome tours and overlays. For most other contexts, a better way to create a wizard is to make a simple automatic function that asks no question of users. So for most other question, like the 80% of the time, the user or the application should predict the most common configuration, kind of like in the open document of Word. There's no configuration ask or any confirmation wizard. It just does the jobs, making reasonable assumptions based on the past behavior or using a well-researched defaults about proper attributes and organization. The user then can change the output as he or she fits using standard tools like the modal dialog box. In other words, the best wizard is really more like a smart person version of a gallery or template. So a best wizard, the reason why we put this wizard before this input and content and the gallery and template is because best wizard is actually a smart version of just a gallery or template. So remember, we could combine these concepts depending on our goals. So we can combine these wizards and this gallery and templates as well. So this was purported to provide value, but it just gave developers this was designed, the wizard are actually designed to provide value or to provide easy or learnability to the customer. But unfortunately, based on our observation, it just gave developers and designers license to put raw implementation model interfaces on complex features with bland assurance that will make it easy with a wizard. So it just became an excuse to put those raw implementation instead of thinking of ways to make it easy for users. So again, guys, all of these things that we are discussing here is just a way that UX designers or developers make all of this easy for us, kind of like in UX laws 100 law that we have discussed in the previous video. All of these dialogue forms has been thought of and then experimented, removing the bad and then uh, keeping the good. So this is actually how we did it. So we'll make sure it's easy with the wizard. This is all too reminiscent of the standard abdication of responsibility to users and usability. So instead of developer working hard to be more usable, providing more complex features, we'll be sure to document it in the manual. So that's becomes an excuse. Tooltips and tooltip overlays. Tooltips and tooltip overlays are very effective in desktop applications. But most mobile apps don't have enough real estate to permit modeless explanations on screen while the primary interactions are occurring. So you don't want the primary actions or interactions hidden. So that's why OS doesn't support this mobile model dialogue. Instead, it supports only immediate and invisible commands. The mobile solution to this conundrum is a hybrid desktop style tooltip. So you still have this little box and mobile overlays concept. Tooltips overlays. So you have a tooltip, mobile tooltip and overlays concept. So tooltip overlays are usually triggered by tapping a help button, a mini help button. Brief tooltip like labels or notes for the brief tooltip like labels or notes for the primary functions on the current screen are displayed. So once you click the help, the primary functions will be displayed in text, each in proximity and pointing to its associated control or icon. The difference is that they are all turned on at once and presented modally, often with a closed box that must be tapped to dismiss. So here you have a close, full screen, kind of like in Windows. There's a close, always a close control. So here, Pinnacle Studio has tooltip overlay facility, which they call pop-up help. It is launched from the app's help menu. Their implementation is interesting because you can continue to use the app while the pop-up help is activated. Not that you typically want to. It is dismissed by tapping the yellow button in the lower left corner. Here, hide pop-up help. So you can continue to use the app while these are activated because it designed the other controls to be still visible while that small modeless box are popping up. So these are the things that we use. These are the best. Even Wizard has its cons. These are the better than asking for online help because it reduces the cognitive or navigation expense. So while this approach can be overwhelming, it can be appropriate for complex authoring apps if used as a kind of cheat sheet for users, for helping users remember controls and functions. So here, if we really don't have an option, we will have to provide the traditional help, aka frequently asked questions, or a manuals. So usually you could provide a manuals for complex authoring or complex applications, such as this, could be an entire book that allow them to dig deep. But for just one-time search, here are the techniques that you could use. So a complex application with many features and functions should come with a reference document, a place where users want to expand their horizons can find definitive answers. So that's the book. Many users will turn to a general internet search engine to find an answer, and you need to make sure your answer is out there as the definitive one. So if they ask or search that in Google, you need to make sure that the user find it. So that's actually how this technical support just do that in their back end. Sometimes they even do use the browser, Google Chrome instead their own browser because it's easier to search there. Printed user manuals can be comfortable to use when users are studying application functionality as a whole, but they are cumbersome for getting quick answers to specific questions. So this is the area where online help, which is index and full text search capability, can shine. Full text search versus indexing. Although it might be tempting to forego the extensive work involved in indexing because of the existence of a full text search capability, there are good reasons to reconsider this decision. So it's like in the previous video in web application or websites, though you may think that you just need a web search option and not organizing the app based on their useful index. It's not always the case because those useful index actually could um, help us get to specifics faster than search, because search might need to search all the files in the disk, which could take longer. So full text search is only as complete as the wording. Another issue is that full text search is only as complete as the wording of the help text itself, and this might not encompass language that reflects user mental models. So the full text search attributes or the because you're searching in a database, and back then you only have this non-relational database, so you need to predict in advance what could be the search related terms with that file. And also like providing all these attributes on that specific file is time consuming and resource intensive. And also the wording of the help text itself, this might not encompass the language that the user have. A user who need to solve a problem might be thinking, how do I turn this cell block, rather than how can I set the shading of this cell to 100%. So the wording matters because again in the previous book, user usually is not aware of the available choices, so they don't know what to ask or what that's why they are usually choosing the wrong solution. If the help text or its index does not capture users' way of phrasing or thinking, the help system will fail. It is usually easier to create these kinds of synonym mappings in an index rather than in the help text itself. So it's usually easier because you're just organizing it, and also if you could provide it in a good way to the customer, or that allows them to see it based on their mental model, it could be faster than search. This index needs to be generated by examining the app and all its features, not simply by examining the help text itself. So this is there is an issue with this because again the functions that user could use on the app is just the function that we put a control in the front end. So basically, in order for us to index it or to organize the search in a good way, the developer should also know how to the details of the app, how it actually works from the back end and the front end. So this is not always easy because it takes a lot of time to learn those all those functionality, because it demands that a highly skilled indexer also be intimately familiar with each of the application features and functions. The set of index entries is arguably as important as the help text itself. Or the search index and then the help text. So the user will forgive a poorly written help entry. So if there is a help fax or help entry, the user will forgive a poorly written help entry more easily than he will forgive what he believes to be a missing help entry. So it's better to provide this than not at all, because if it's missing, the user will be so irritated, and also he will not be aware that those functions exist, or like this is the usual case for some controls for famous applications before that, um, that could not be resolved even by the technical support of their on-site. So even the forum, you need to ask these specific forums for some expert on the app to actually fix the problem. So those are the caveats with this. Another thing is that it's hard to index it because you need to know the intricacies. So it should be better than standard frequently asked questions. So while good online help is very useful, good design should greatly reduce users' reliance on any help systems. So a good designs, actually all of this, the commands, the immediate, invisible, and the menu or the visible command are all, and then the help guides such as um, guided tour overlays, template, hints, and wizard, tooltips and overlays are all just resolution, kind of like a technical support to make our users understand the functionality, of our back end. So remember, we're helping the user to achieve their end goal. So those basically boil down to functionality. But again, it needs to be easy to use. You need to remove exercise for the visceral brain of them to be familiar and choose our application over the other. Overview description. So this is another way for us to provide this traditional help. What we need to know is scope, effect, power, upside, downside, general process, and why we might want to use this facility both in absolute terms and comparison to similar products from other vendors. So you need to be organized here. The scope, based on user persona, this is where you actually the persona, the understanding of persona becomes important as well. So as you can see, the understanding of persona all are related here, because this will also determine how you will include the scope, the effect, the power of that functions or tool, the upside, the downside of that function, the general process, the caveats, and why we might want to use this facility compared to other similar products or vendors. So this is the missing from most online help system. For example, if users want to know how the enter macro command works, and the help system explain uselessly that it is a facility that lets you enter macros in the system. Uh, so if it's included in the overview, the customer does not need to go to the user forum to ask the question, or in the technical support forum. In-app user guides. Uh, use Software applications are increasingly delivered online, but before, we actually provide these guides manual manually. But the need for reference documentation still exists. For tablet-based authoring tools of particular complexity, such as digital audio, workstation, and other pro-level media editing apps, or for desktop productivity software of almost any sort, such as Word, Excel, PowerPoint, it's useful to provide an integrated user guide that's always accessible from the help menu. So here are a good example. Steinberg's Cube Basis app has a sophisticated help system that includes a searchable in-app user guide, as well as links to user forums and video tutorials. So you can immediately click the links for the user forums, video tutorials, and an in-app user guides. So in-app guides should not be the first line of help. That's why we put that at the end. The task should be handled by guided tours or overlays. Instead, in-app guides should be referenced for detailed information using complex functions, kind of like the printed or the book, or kind of like a reference document. If your app is a complex pro tool, your users will appreciate the inclusion of the guide in-app, so that they don't have to go looking for it on your website, and even more so if the guide table of contents is hyperlinked. So it's better if it's hyperlinked, because they just need to click it. And the guide itself is full text searchable, well indexed, well organized, and printable. So that would be better, because they can use complex tools such as website with mouse and keyboard to just search on that document. So if it's a PDF, make it searchable using applying OCR, and all the needed information could be searched using Control F. Customizability. It's easy to be torn between. Some users need to have things done their way, and clear problem and the clear problem this creates when the app's navigation suffers due to familiar elements being moved or hidden. So the solution is to cast the problem in a different light. So customizability has some issues, but as we will later see, we just need to look at it in a different light. Because yes, there's a layout breaking tool that affects the navigation and the usability of the product, but there's a way for us to still provide this customization. So there's three types of customization. First, personalization. Decorating the persistent objects, the walls, gives people individuality and makes place we work more likable and familiar without major structural changes. It also allows you to recognize a hallway as being different from dozens of identical hallways, because it is the one with MC Escher poster hanging in it. Windows has always been very accommodating in this respect, allowing users to independently change the color of each component of the Windows interface, including the color and pattern of the desktop itself. So it allows us to provide individuality that makes us more motivated to do our job. So this is personalization, kind of like changing things like background of the desktop, or things that makes us say that we are working on that. So tools for personalizing must be simple and easy to use. You should not provide multiple dialog box. So you should give users a visual preview of their selections as well, because people either love it or they don't. So it's either they either love that tool that will help them personalize, or they don't. And moving persistent objects can hamper navigation. So you make it easy and then understandable, so that they don't move object that will hamper the layout. So above all, and also in the previous video we discussed that that layout tool usually has this modal box on them, and it is clear, and it's also hidden, or kind of like small for word, right? To avoid the beginners to do it. But for experts, since you're talking about expert for this, usually for this personalization, you should not you should make it easy if they want to configure it. Above all, they must be easy to undo. So a dialog box that lets user change colors should offer a function that returns everything to the factory settings, kind of like in the settings of your phone, when resetting a network settings, or any settings, right? I mean, the settings is a good example of that in your phone. So you can configure it, but you can easily revert it to normal. Is this the apparent contradiction? Not really. Adding decoration to persistent objects helps navigation. So if you have a decoration that fits on their mental model, it will help them navigate. So you're not really removing, in personalization, you're not removing the main or persistent object that will enormously disrupt the layout, or irreversible objects, whereas moving persistent object hinders navigation. It will hinder the navigation because it will disrupt the flow of the app. So the term configuration describes moving, adding, or deleting persistent object. So configuration, this is actually where you move the persistent object, but you need to do it in modal dialog box as well. So perpetual intermediates, after they have established a working set of functions, or minimal set of functions, will want to configure the interface to make those functions easier to find and use based on their individual mental model or working sets. They will also want to tune the application itself for speed and ease, but in all cases, the level of configuration will be light to moderate. So it's not that huge configuration. It's just enough for them to fit their workflow. Configuration are necessity for expert because they are already beyond the need for more traditional navigation aids. So they are adept for like Control Z or Control S, kind of like developer or the prime time when using Vim, because they are so familiar with the product. So experts may use the application for several hours every day. In fact, it may be the main application for accomplishing the bulk of their job. So you want to provide them a way. So unfortunately for our job, before we use NM1, we don't have this way to configure it. Though we do have the basic immediate and invisible control, or accelerator rather, and we have mnemonics, but that's about it. So moving controls around on toolbars is a form of personalization. So moving controls on the toolbar is just a personalization. It's not configuration. Yeah. However, the three leftmost toolbar controls on many desktop apps, which is correspond to File New, File Open, and File Save, are now so common that they can be considered persistent objects. So persistent objects really depends on the most common functionality, and where those objects become a persistent in mental model of people. So just File Open, File Save, and File New. So a user who moves this around is configuring his application as much as he is personalizing it. So it's more like he's configuring now than personalizing it. Most intermediate users won't squawk if they can configure their app, as long as it does its job well. Some expert users may feel slighted, but they will still use and appreciate the application if it works how they expect. So its configuration is mainly for expert, but they will appreciate it if they can do it what they expect. Kind of like the expert users. If you subscribe to Prime Time, he's a developer, so he usually tailor his accelerator command in Vim application. So those are the type of users we're talking about here. In some cases, however, flexibility is critical. If you're designing for a rapidly evolving workflow, such as integrated development environment, it's of utmost importance that the software used to support the workflow can evolve as quickly as the state of the art. So if your workflow are evolving, such as a developer, you're trying to develop something, the language are changing, so kind of like an expert. So you need to have OE to configure that. So corporate IT managers appreciate the ability to add macros and commands to menus and toolbars that make the off-the-shelf software work more intimately with established company process tools and software. So this like disabling the browser and then providing or disabling the some functionality in their Microsoft Word for corporate, right? Those are the things that is configuration, because it's drastically different. It's more like configuration than personalization, because it changed those common mental models for common, the common icons or functions or commands for normal people. Idiosyncratically model behavior. Often usability testing may show that the user population is split almost equally on the effectiveness of a user interface idiom. This division of two or more groups are called idiosyncratically modal. One group becomes the menu item comp, and the rest of the developer are in the toolbar comps. So some intermediate users could be a menu item, while some are a toolbar because they already know it. They want it fast. Both groups should be satisfied. It is no good to satisfy one half of the population while angering the other half, regardless of which group you or your developers align yourself with. So it's kind of like application in details on how we can satisfy primary and secondary persona, right? And how we can balance that so that we still serving that primary persona. So one of the rare case is that our primary persona prefers the same two different idioms. Windows satisfy Mac and Windows users preference by letting Windows user click and release on the menu bar item. Because when you click this and then release, click and release, that's how you usually configure that, right? But oh my god. So that's how you click the menu if you are adept if you're a Windows user. But for Mac, oh god. Sorry about that, guys. So that's actually you use that you click and release. So we discussed in the previous video, that's how you activate controls. But for Mac, actually for menu, they hold that menu and then release that to whatever controls they want. So what Windows did is they satisfy both user by letting Windows user click and release on the menu bar item to make the menu appear. Then user can move the mouse button release to the menu item of choice. Another click and release selects the item and closes the menu. The Mac user can also still click and drag to select a menu item. Starting in Windows 95, Microsoft added third idiosyncratically model idiom to standard menu behavior. So idiosyncratically model behavior are the things that two primary persona like, two idioms in one command. Added a third idiosyncratically model idiom to standard menu behavior. The user clicks and releases as before, but now he can drag the mouse along the menu bar. So those menu bar can now be a model, kind of like a toolbar. And the other menus are triggered automatically in turn. They did not carry this behavior over to this now new ribbon UI. So the Mac now support each of these idiom on its menus. Amazingly, all three are accommodated seamlessly. So for Mac, they actually provide that option for that menu for Microsoft Word, but here for Windows they don't provide that. So localization and globalization. Localization refers to translating an application for a particular language and culture. Globalization refers to making an application as universal as possible across many languages and cultures. Immediate interfaces such as direct manipulation and toolbar icon buttons are idiomatic. And visual rather than textual. So it's visual rather than textual. So you don't need to localize this because it's not textual, like it won't be misinterpreted by different cultures. Therefore, they can be globalized with considerable ease. Of course, it is important for designers to do their homework to ensure that colors or symbols chosen for this idiom do not have particular meanings in different cultures that the designer does not intend. In Japan, for example, an X in a checkbox would likely be interpreted as deselection rather than selection. So an X actually, or deselection rather than selection in Japan. However, in general, non-metaphorical idioms should be fairly safe for globalized interfaces. So an idiom is safe. Pedagogic interface such as menu item, field labels, tooltips, and instructional hints are language dependent and thus must be the subject of localization via translation into appropriate language. So all those menu items, the field labels, the tooltips, and instructional hints, wizards, what's that? The online help, traditional full text overview, in-app user guide, um, input and content area hints, galleries and templates, overlays, guided tours, here working sets is not, those are all the subject of this localization. via translation into appropriate languages. Here are some issues that pops up when it needs to be localized. The words and phrases in some language tend to be longer than in others. German words, for example, on average can be significantly longer than those in English, and Spanish sentences tend to be some of the longest. Plan button and other text label layouts accordingly, especially on space constrained mobile devices. So plan buttons and other text label layouts accordingly. So you need to plan this button and then the text label on that accordingly, especially on space constrained mobile devices, especially if it's a small device, because you can't express that as in desktop. Works in some languages, Asian language in particular, can be difficult to sort alphabetically. So it's hard to sort that, especially for Japanese. Ordering day, month, and year and the use of 12 or 24-hour notation for time vary from country to country. Decimal points in numbers and currency are represented differently. Some countries use periods and commas, and the opposite of how they are used in the US. Some countries use week numbers. For example, week 50 is the mid-December, and some countries use calendars other than Gregorian calendar. Menu items and dialogues, when they are translated, need to be considered holistically. It is important to make sure that translated interfaces remain coherent as a whole. So the menu items and dialogues need to be customized for that local, because it's purely text, though it could have an icon beside. It needs to be considered holistically. It's important to make sure that translated interfaces remain coherent, such as the attribute concept we discussed in the previous video. Items and labels that translate straightforwardly in a vacuum may become confusing when grouped with other independently translated items. So you need to check that how it would affect the user based on the whole, not just on the translated text. So you need to have this translator to see how it actually feel to the user. So here is the accessibility techniques. So it's another way for us, again, if we failed, or we want to provide more information on the design, because of course user won't be able to understand all the functionality at once, right? So designing for accessibility, this is another way for us to know or to so it's kind of related with goal-oriented design and creating persona, in which you can use this to create the persona as well, right? For example, if you determine this or these accessibility techniques, you can better serve different personas, because you're aware on what to avoid. So actually, sometimes when you design for accessibility, sometimes it will be, most of the time it will be usable for most people, because if it's an accessible people can use it, what more is the non-accessible people? So designing for accessibility means designing your app so that it can be effectively used by people with cognitive, sensory, or motor impairments due to age, accident, or illness. So senses like hearing and our visual capacity, as well as those without such impairments. With those without such impairments, which is estimated 750 million people worldwide. This is particularly true for any application targeted at seniors or at patients suffering from serious or debilitating illness. So a lot of our products actually are targeted for these people because they're non-techy. So usually the tech people are actually not the the antithesis or fire persona. So yeah, it's kind of like the middle ground of these accessible people and the expert or tech people is the persona, but we still need to design for these people, and some of the apps are mainly targeted for these seniors and patients. So goals for accessibility: for a product or service to be considered accessible, it should meet the following conditions for both unimpaired and impaired users. Users can perceive and understand all instructions, informations, and feedback. Users can understand all instruction, information, and feedback. They must understand the function, what it does, what action it will provide, whether it will get money from from them or not. Users can perceive, understand, and easily manipulate any controls and inputs. Users can navigate easily and always be aware of where they are in the interface and navigational structure. It's not necessary that this condition, especially the first, to be accomplished within a single presentation of an interface for all users. Because remember, especially for mobile, you're only presenting one at a time. A typical accessibility strategy is to design a separate accessibility mode or set of accessibility options. This option alters screen contrast and colors, change the size and weight of the text, or turn on a screen reader and audible navigation systems. So I know you've experienced that, such as you can only modify or provide input based on voice using their voice recognition algorithm. But mostly it's screen contrast and then size, because that's the visual principles, right? Visual elements. Accessibility personas. Naturally, the ideal method of creating this persona would be to interview users or potential users of your product who have disabilities that would affect their use of the product. If this isn't possible, you can still create provisional persona, like we've discussed in the previous video, to help focus on accessibility issues in a somewhat less targeted way. Typically, an accessibility persona would be considered a secondary persona, someone with needs similar to your primary persona, but with some special needs that must be addressed without compromising their experience. So usually this accessibility is actually secondary persona because we don't want to ignore them due to laws and regulation. So to actually create this accessibility persona, we can just create provisional persona and use these accessibility techniques that we've discussed in the previous video and this guidelines. Sometimes though, selecting an accessibility persona as a primary can result in a breakthrough products, as OXO and Smart Design did with their good grips and products. So this is what I'm saying. When you design for accessibility, it will be useful or accessible for most people, but sometimes it could be a breakthrough. It turns out that kitchen tools that are optimized for people with arthritis are more satisfying for everyone. Accessibility guidelines. So the following 10 guidelines are not replacement for the exploring the specific needs of disabled user based on goal-directed research regarding your product and the design trade-off involves, but they do provide reasonable starting point for approaching accessible design. More details about each appear below. Leverage OS accessibility tools and guidelines. Some operating systems offer accessibility support such as screen readers and audible navigation aids for the vision impaired, such as VoiceOver for iOS and TalkBack for Android. So you need to leverage this to better help you with your app. Your application shouldn't use keystrokes or gestures that are already committed to enabling OS level accessibility features for application functions. So you should not provide immediate command or accelerator or keystrokes or mnemonics that already in the OS. Your application should work properly when accessibility features are turned on. So even if it's turned on, it should still work properly to accommodate them. Your application should use standard application programming for input and output when possible to ensure compatibility with OS and third-party assistive technologies such as screen readers that may be used by assistive user to connect with your app. Don't override user-selected system settings. The application should not override system-level settings that support accessibility options for interface attributes such as color, schemes, font size, and typeface. So a lot of system level settings for accessibility phones are actually automatic, so you should not override that. This need not be true in the default application settings, but some accessibility options should revert to OS level hints for visual style. Enable standard keyboard access methods. For desktop applications, keyboard accelerators and mnemonics should be employed. So there should be a keyboard accelerator and mnemonics that will be employed, as well as a rational tab navigation scheme. So it's kind of like embedding that in the HTML if it's a website or web application, or if it's a desktop, of course in the desktop, or if it's a mobile, should be mobile. The user should be able to traverse the entire set of user interface controls, elements, and contents areas using tab key. Arrow keys should let the user traverse list, table, and menu controls. So these are especially in web applications. So the enter key should activate buttons and toggles. Incorporate display options for those with limited vision. Application settings should support a range of options for users with vision problems. So you should need to provide these functions in the settings that support range of options with vision problems, such as colorblind, a high contrast minimum 80% display option using predominantly block text on white background, option for enlarging the typeface and increasing its weight. Ideally, these are independent settings. It should be in independent modal dialog. An option for colorblind friendly information display if applicable. An option for minimizing motion and animation in UI elements. So the motion we've discussed in the previous video, you should minimize that, or at least provide modal dialogues to change the settings or the states for that if these are used in the default interface. Your application should not, but only if that distracting animation are used in your default. But if it's good, then nothing to worry about. Your application should not rely on color alone as the sole method of conveying the meaning of the data or functionality. There must be some way on the settings to convey that data or functionality for the user to be aware on it. It should use other attributes such as size, position, brightness, shape, or textual labeling to make meaning clear. Provide visual only and audible only output. Support for vision impaired users should be available in the form of audible interface. So there should be a voice interface such as those provided by screen readers and OS level accessibility service. Typically, the UI for vision impaired users is realized as a separate application mode. Support for the hearing impaired usually can be managed within the standard UI for normal user through careful design of the standard user feedback mechanism to include both audible and visual elements. Don't flash, flicker, scroll, or blink visual elements. Flashing and other blinking at speeds greater than twice a second can be confusing to the vision impaired. So it's also confusing with the normal user. They can also cause seizures in individuals with epilepsy and other brain disorders. Plus, it's usually annoying for everyone else. Automatically scrolling text and other animations can be confusing and difficult for those with visual impairments to perceive. So avoid this automatic scrolling as well. Use simple, clear, brief language. The shorter and simpler the text labels and instruction text in your interface, as long as they are still appropriately descriptive, the easier they will be to learn and use. Use response times that support all users. Allow users to elect for longer response times. So allow them to change the settings for longer. A good rule for thumb for the longer duration is 10 times the average response times currently in your application. This includes the length of time that transitory notifiers are left visible after they launch. It also should apply to any timers and actions. In general, unless there's a really good reason to time out on an action such as security, you should ideally avoid doing so. If you must, make the timeout period user adjustable. So for security, you should reduce the timeout because you need to keep the user information secure. Keep layouts and task flow consistent. People with cognitive, motor, or vision impairments are best served if they need to remember and execute only a single navigation and action paradigm rather than several different or incompatible ones, such as tapping, one tap only, or swiping. Consider how navigating your interface using a keyboard is likely to work on your screen, and try to make it consistent as possible across views and pins. Provide text equivalents for visual elements. So finally, make sure that any purely visual elements or controls in your desktop application or website are marked with the text, kind of like menu, so that screen readers can enunciate them. So Microsoft Windows, for example, allow invisible tooltips that can be enunciated by screen readers. They don't appear for users of default application. Similarly, it's important for web interfaces to assign tags to visual elements. This allows them to be understood by people using text-based browser, browse-based voice readers, and other web accessibility tools.